this is sort of a pretty. Do we have everybody are painters here, or obviously anybody that work with portraits and things of that nature? I wasn't sure what I was going to be getting myself into tonight, so so I kind of brought see down here like every color I own, which is not every color that I use all the time. So depending on what the situation might be, I'll use an earth palette or a prismatic palette or a combination of both. So maybe like a high chroma red, yellow, and blue, and maybe a low chroma or an earth red, yellow, and blue. Sometimes I'll use a warm and cool of each of those. So a warm and cool yellow, a warm and cool red, and a warm and cool blue. And I tend to keep it pretty simple. I don't use many greens. I typically use a green. And the palette really varies depending on whether I'm like the subject. If I'm painting a sunset, where the sun's setting over a ridge or something along those lines, the color is going to be much more brilliant. And I would probably be reaching for very different colors than I am tonight. Looking at the setup here this evening, we have a very kind of a low chroma situation, lots of grays, a really lovely light here. And so I think I'll try to make the most of that. But that's kind of, as far as the color thinking goes, that's sort of where I'm at. Typically, so a little bit of a background about me. I went to Savannah College of Art and Design for my undergraduate degree, and I actually graduated with that in illustration. And then I moved up to Philadelphia to work with the artists of the Pennsylvania Academy of the Fine Arts, and was kind of brought into that sort of lineage of artists. Everybody from Thomas Akins to, you name it, Edwin Dickinson, Sargent, like they all kind of came through there. Cecilia Bow, everybody kind of made their way through that academy. It was a very rich history, and I really appreciated the learning that I got there. Since then, I've begun teaching and doing workshops kind of all over the East Coast. I've worked for Gamblin Artist Colors as one of their educational representatives, and right now I'm teaching full-time at the Pennsylvania College of Art and Design. Very close, that whole Pennsylvania thing. But I've taught with Tyler, and I've taught with Swarthmore, and Acadia, and a couple other universities as well. So most of my background comes through a lineage of Edwin Dickinson and that kind of thinking. So that's what I'd be, Charles Hawthorne, Edwin Dickinson, into the Pennsylvania Academy, which is a little bit of a different school of art than, say, the French academic methods. So it's a very shape-driven type of painting. And so I'll do my best to make something happen for you all tonight in the time that we have. So yeah, wish me luck. Okay. So typically we'll start to just by drawing. I don't do a lot of drawing. I think, but for the most part, I kind of just get started with a little bit of just placement. And if anybody has questions along the way, that might be the best way to go about this. And feel free. I try not to do too elaborate of a drawing. I think my main things that I'm really interested in, for me, the composition, and I think for a lot of painters, the composition is paramount. So I'm typically looking for just something that feels good within the rectangle, at least at this stage. And that might take me a few passes just to kind of think about. With the portrait, I think, likenesses are something that, I always try for, but they are fleeting. So I aim for a good painting more than I aim for an exactness. And I think that makes,
What are you painting on? Is that
canvas? Yeah, so what I'm painting on is actually it's a resin coated. It's a resin coated paper. So it's something that I kind of have recently started working with a little bit. I enjoy it. It's easy to do, and it works really well for a lot of plein air painting situations. So I will, work with this a lot for plein air as well. I'll use this paper.
Is it ultra smooth?
It's got a little bit of a tooth to it. It is pretty smooth, but it's not as smooth as a board. Think of like cardboard. That sort of maybe like a cardboard type texture. Does that help? Kind of, you're welcome.
What I thought it was.
Yeah, no, it's actually not. It's coated to be able to work on as an archival surface, and cardboard is not, as you probably know. Cardboard can obviously be exactly the opposite of an archival surface. It will be much more it'll lose its, because of the acidity over time, it will tend to. So right now, I'm just sort of looking. At this point, I mean, this is more of a sketch, or maybe a study is what I would kind of consider it. With the time that we have together tonight, it's this is maybe a little bit faster than I would approach this if it was, say, a commission or anything like that. But that being said, I think everything's still fine. And so I'll be quiet out there. Does anybody have any questions? Or?
Don't steal the show, but I just find portraits very difficult.
Oh yeah.
Because the person you're doing, you've got to get a likeness, and if you don't,
It's sort of subjective, because you see something different than they see.
yeah, I guess I just want perfection, and I've started so many that I just gave up on. A few I've got, I feel okay. But I guess it's just practice, right?
Well, not to get too, philosophical. I gave up on perfection a while ago. Maybe that's.
It's a representation, unless then if the person doesn't like it.
Yeah, just don't buy it.
Yeah, that's all you can hope for.
I've read a lot.
There are people who can do it almost photographic.
Yeah, it's
You
just
know.
like my daughter can just get a likeness like
Really?
that.
Wow.
So,
That makes it hard.
For me, it's work.
My aims are, not as much about, of course, there's like the likeness, but I think I'm more interested in some other things.
What colors do you use for skin tone there?
Right now, I think this is a mixture of like a Naples yellow light and let's see, it's called Indian red, I think, or something along those lines.
Years
It's
and
like
years
some
of-
sort of earth red is.
Years and years of mixing colors, you know how to get to that, what you see, that's the thing. That's all you can hope for.
I've read a lot
There
of-
are people who can do it almost photographic, but
Yeah,
You
it's
know.
like my daughter can just get away. It's like
really,
that.
that makes it hard.
For me, it's work.
Well, yeah, everybody's certainly different. My aims are, not as much about, of course, there's like the likeness, but I think I'm more interested in some other things.
What colors do you use for skin tone there?
Right now, I think this is a mixture of like a Naples yellow light and let's see, it's called Indian red, I think, or something along those lines.
Years
It's
and
like
years
some sort of earth red is.
Years and years of mixing colors, you know how to get to that, what you see, that's the thing. See, I'd be walking up to the subject, it's just.
What was the thing you were saying about squinting?
Well, squinting is a way of seeing all of the values and the big masses of value. So if you're looking at, say the face here, and you squint your eyes a little bit, you can see how the light and shadow sort of block into each other in a way that's a little bit more clear. And that's just a helpful. There is a painter named Charles Hawthorne that kind of comes from, or I guess is sort of the school of painting that I come from, and he called it the profound squint, or Edwin Dickinson is another painter who would have called it the profound squint. It's like this idea that if you squint down enough, you can see the big shapes. And if you hold on to those big shapes and you hold on to the masses, and if you can draw those really clearly, and of course you have some ideas of painting and some background with all of this stuff, it would help to kind of determine some of those things. So, all right, so let's see here for a second. So at this point, I think
What's that doing, smoothing?
just softening everything down a little bit, the form of a person isn't quite as hard as a lot of these shapes end up becoming, we're very soft.
Uh-huh.
So, yeah, I usually find a moment to do that in the process. And right now, I'm kind of just deciding whether or not I really want to kind of make a big jump in value, which I think I do. So like this. Sure, this being that opportunity. I'm not gonna worry too much about that lace. You know, those are the kind of things that you get hung up on that drive you mad. I have to remind myself that this is just sort of a demo of how to block in for a painting more than it is a finished thing. So you know, that gives me some ideas about these values, and you know, if I'm looking at this, they're all sort of grouped in the same range, and so I know that I want to and need to kind of make a little bit of a more of a punch, and that's something that the ground here kind of helps me to determine. But the question kind of becomes, well, where do I want to make a little bit more of a darker note? So at this point, you know, I might consider dropping in like my darkest dark of sorts somewhere in the painting, just to kind of like let me know what that range is going to be. You see, I've kind of learned working out of the middle, and what I mean by that is the tones that I've been playing with so far really live in the mid tone, and so I haven't, you know, a lot of schools you go from dark to light, and it's sort of like very dramatic. And but you know, when I look at like the painters that I really admire, um, they have a little bit of an air about them. The paintings have a tendency to have a little bit more air, and I don't know for certain, but I think that comes from this kind of working out of the mid ground. Like someone like Degas, you know, I'm a big fan of Degas. I love Degas. And someone like Degas would do that. Like Degas would work as a, you know, tonal painter, and it wasn't the kind of classical thing that was being done. In fact, it was kind of a rebellion against. So having this kind of mid ground that you're working into and dropping in a shadow like that helps everything else kind of feel a little bit okay, I have a sense of where this can go. And I've been holding off on doing the background because you know, the background here is so close to the shirt that I'm kind of trying to decide where I want this balance to kind of be, you know, kind of grow out of itself. How are you doing up there? You're doing a great job, I think. Really wonderful. Thank you. So, in the same kind of thought, you know, now that I've kind of dropped in a bit of a dark idea, I'm going to kind of also drop in a couple of what might be highlights eventually. You know, there's the one on the forehead that's pretty typical. One that would kind of put somewhere on the nose. In this area. nothing too dramatic, but just to kind of give me an idea of my range of values. So, with that, I think I've got some room to something back here. Do you have any more questions out there or out in the world of the internet? I feel like I'm the only one talking like that.
Are you on Instagram?
I am. You can find me on Instagram at paintlanguage.com. Sorry, paintlanguage is the handle. Paintlanguage.com is the other, is the website.
Paint.
Paint language. Mhm.
Gets-
All one word.
Mhm. Okay, so now I'm just gonna start kind of building up some of these shapes that I'm seeing where the light is definitely hitting what might be, in this area, we're talking about the light. So you might have an idea of sort of like that classical, ball, where you have the light mass, shadow mass, where those two things meet. It's generally called the terminator, right? And there's the line there that goes a little bit darker. So then the light mass kind of builds values towards the highlight. And that's sort of where I'm thinking right now is building values towards the highlight. And again, that would be in a shape. Everything happens in shapes. You can't escape that with painting. So
Do you find one part harder than the other, like eyes, nose, mouth?
um,
Oh,
it's all hard.
what was that?
It's all hard. It's all challenging. Honestly, I think one part harder than another. Maybe,
It depends on the person.
what I find hard is coming back to the painting and picking up again. Like that's the most challenging part, I think.
Because the feel that you have.
Well, yeah, it's the sort of like getting it back moving again and trying to get that feeling of where were you, how do you, how can you pick that back up again? So I try not to, and I think, I try not to name things. That's part of, sort of focusing on the shapes rather than
Yeah, it's all
the
shapes and shadows.
eyeball and right. Yeah, and when I find that if I can kind of keep my mind thinking about, all right, well, what is this shape doing? What is this edge doing?
Mhm.
What is this tone? and how can I build that almost like a mosaic, like a puzzle piece, then I have better results.
Mhm.
And the painting just has a way of kind of coming together a little bit better. But you know, there's so much that you can't control too. You know, does that make sense? That idea of the mosaic?
Mhm.
I find that's a really helpful way to think about painting in general.
You know, when you first apply it, it feels abrupt, you know what I mean?
Right.
Drastic to what you're doing, but then it sort of eventually blends in. Does that make sense?
Mhm. Yeah, I think so. You know, and your knowledge of anatomy can help you. There's a lot of things that can help you, but you know, there's no recipe. You know, to I don't know. I haven't found a recipe to making a good painting every time. So if someone has found that, please give it to me. I want that recipe. I'd like that recipe. So, you know,
64.
Oh, 64.
Okay, so I was almost right.
You were almost right. So that would be 40. Yeah. 60 some.
There were a lot of good people, good painters.
oh, I bet. Anybody that you can, anybody I might know?
Well known, anybody well known? Came out of the group.
Oh, Jack Collins.
In Valley, who's Valley? What's his name over there? His father's in the Smithsonian. And Val,
Victoria.
Oh, Val Victoria.
That's awesome.
and Gretchen Lee.
This area is just so full of amazing artists. Who'd you say, Gretchen Lee?
Gretchen Lee. She has a studio and was president at one time. And one of the artists that we had, I don't know who brought him here, maybe Will, but he was awesome. He painted the mural that was behind the Pope. When the Pope came to town.
Ah.
That sounds like a Bob Dylan song. When the Pope came down.
Peek at the pole.
Yeah,
He was the artist that painted the mural.
You're like John Singer Sargent.
oh, I love Sargent. Yeah, Sargent's great.
I saw his paintings at the Met in New York City.
Mhm.
There's a big brushes.
Yeah.
Oh, I know, yeah. Yeah, it's that bravado is something else, isn't it?
First show I saw
Mm.
I'm stupid.
So what are you trying to accomplish now?
Well, so I'm just really trying to, like I said, this is a block in, you know, so I'm really at this stage just trying to, well, get rid of that color. because that's not-
Redefine the shadows.
I'm trying to make those shapes work as closely to her as possible. Is pretty much all I'm doing. And I've also got Edward.
You're right.
It's happening here.
You need a brush.
Edward
holder.
paint hand happening over
You
here.
need to write.
Yeah.
A rack.
Put this down. This is what happens when you're at the end of the day and you're painting and talking and thinking and answering. Then you're kind of your brain's being split into a lot of areas. So okay, so I think in order to make this look like her, I really have to get these shapes of light and shadow here to be as specific as possible.
It's just.
And just really, like, that's kind of the first task that I think I really
I
have to
just never.
accomplish, so that's gonna happen along this edge, and you know, you can really trace it kind of from the chin, this, you know, what they call the terminator between light and shadow. You can really kind of trace that all the way from the head all the way down the chin if you're doing it right. You can look at like someone like and I'll make it kind of obvious for you here, but you know, somebody like Velasquez or somebody that just so I can kind of show you as an example. I should be able to kind of take that all the way.
Just think you draw like pieces of it instead of drawing shadows, depths, and shapes.
Yeah, I think of the shapes of the edge of the shadows as drawing. You know, that way I'm always kind of thinking about, you know, edge and shape and form, and it's less about like the linear, you know, because painting, you know, somebody mentioned Sargent, and someone like Sargent, you know, would have really been painting less linear and more, you know, big shapes of mass. And I think if you can, you know, get those shapes right, then you can start to find something that starts to resemble, you know, the person that you're looking at. So that's part of the struggle.
From back here, if I squint, it's looking very good.
Well, that's nice to hear, because I have no idea at this point how it's going. Thank you.
Will you normally get up and, you know, step back and look at it as a whole?
You know, I probably would, and I should, and I
No,
haven't,
just
and I'm glad you
normally
said
you
that,
would,
but
yeah.
yeah, I would. I'm not in my normal state of mind, I think.
Well, it's also a small portrait, so.
It really is. I didn't really know how big, you know, to do this, because I knew we had 45 minutes. And I was like, all right, well, what can I accomplish to try to accomplish, or at least, you know, show you as far as like a block in kind of procedure for 45 minutes. You know, and this is kind of what
Do you paint sitting or do you stand when you're painting normally?
you know, I paint standing more often than not. I really prefer to stand. Because, thank you for saying that. You're reminding me all of these things that I'm not
You're breaking
doing,
all the
that-
rules.
Yeah,
You need to move your
these are
butt,
things
right?
these are things that I do naturally that I'm not doing because I'm not in my
Tired.
natural environment.
Right.
But yes, that's
It's easier to stand back if you're standing on.
right. No, I
Yeah,
usually and I
you
usually do
move.
that. I kind of like move
Right.
back and forth, and that is absolutely something that I do.
Yeah.
And it is very helpful.
What's your typical size canvas?
Much bigger than this. I mean, unless I'm painting landscape, and then it might be something a little bit, around this size.
Hmm.
But usually, fairly large, few feet.
Said you've been painting all day. Are you teaching today?
I was
What were you teaching today?
painting.
So are we
That's
doing
what he
portrait
teaches.
painting? Are we just doing?
I was teaching painting at the Pennsylvania college.
Techniques.
Yeah,
Just
we're
general technique?
a junior level painting class. Um,
So,
And, so
so when you're scraping those, sometimes you're overlapping colors. Does that really matter much? Or you want it to blend?
I wanted to, I'm kind of, pulling it's all kind of about these like shapes and these edges. I don't know, I really find that, the more that I do that, like where I bring things together. I mean, for me, I think painting kind of lives in, I don't know, I was saying this earlier today to a student. I think I was saying that, painting is an opportunity for to study how things come together rather than how they are separate. And I kind of I like that as an idea for a lot of reasons, but sort of like just dropping things together. Like we don't know, there's something that happens in the painting when I'm focused on that, on bringing things together.
Now with oil, you have a large leeway to keep doing that, like moving the paint.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, I do. To a point. And again, it kind of goes into that, idea of working out in the middle also. Because when you bring a lot of white into the painting, I'll put it this way, it's a lot easier to lighten something than to darken something with oil paint. So especially if you're using something like, like titanium white, it can really be very challenging. So, you know, you kind of see me I keep bringing things up and pushing things back as tones, and like something like this is a very light color, but it doesn't look that light in relation to everything else. It actually, kind of feels a little bit close to the skin, and sometimes I will, start to block things in that way too, so I can kind of really see. I'm not sure if you all saw the painting that was used for promotional purposes for this or not, but yeah, that happened very, it's very slow moving like this.
So if you stop this though, how long do you have to come back to really, but you can always come back?
Well, I mean, it dries, and that's part of the, part of I guess the thing here is that, you want it to, you want to be able to get back into the painting. So this is, showing you about a sort of a blocking method. So, for a block in, you want to keep it as simple as you can, as long as you can, until those large shapes are working, those values are working. And if you think about it as like a mosaic, right, then the more shapes you have, and the more tones you have, and the more you're juggling, the harder it is to actually, get back into the painting, because then you have to duplicate. If I had to mix this color, I could make it cleaner. If I had to mix this color, I could and make it cleaner. Same here and same here. But if I had a lot of shapes, then it would be almost impossible to really kind of get back into. If that helps kind of clarify the thinking a little bit. I hope. So.
I think it's,
Yeah, whenever you have to call it, because I won't. So, yeah, I'll just keep going. So you have to be the one to say stop, or at least let our model.
She'll fall asleep.
when she falls over.
When she falls over. Well, you've been fantastic. Thank you for doing this. I'm not sure I did you any justice today, but at least we've got I'll just very quickly drop in a couple of thoughts, and then we'll call it a quit. So I think I was moving a little slow and didn't quite get to my darkest notes here, but just so you all can kind of see where I was heading.
No, I was saying, I think it looks like a very successful start. Do you think that or no?
Yeah.
No, I'm asking.
Oh, you're asking me?
Yeah, I'm asking you.
Oh, don't ask me. I never know.
Oh.
I never
mean,
know
thank you
until,
for everybody's
yeah,
input.
I mean, I think it's one of those things that I don't know until maybe at least the day after,
Yeah.
and then,
You have to come back to it.
and I have to come back to it, yeah, so.
But when
You
you come back to it at that point, you still could modify
Okay.
because it's all.
Right, okay. You should probably jump up while you can,
Or he'll keep painting.
or I will keep painting, and I will keep you there all night, so, so yeah.
It's just needing to find.
Oh, there's some questions that while he's in transition, questions for him?
Looks good.
Let's give him a hand down.